strings off of the way of the knot that I do. It makes it a little bit...
Yeah, we won't videotape the string change. We've got a set of reds we're going to put on. Again, some of you have talked about the Aquila Reds breaking real easy. The issue with Aquila Red, with the fact that it has the copper powder bonded to the knotgut core, is the fact that it makes them a little bit trickier to install. They need to be stretched a little bit more gently, a little more thoroughly, not brought up to tension too quickly, and kind of worked along the fretboard, and we'll show that. But I'll let Brian finish taking the strings off. You notice that he loosened the strings first. Always do that before you cut the strings, otherwise you'll end up with a string flying up and hitting you in the face. We'll go ahead and get the other strings ready to put back on, show you the knots that you use. Okay, Brian's got all the old strings off now. We talked about in the group quite a bit, what do we put on our fretboards, how do we clean the instrument, what should we use to clean the surface, Brian?
I just use kind of a microfiber cloth with nothing on it. If it's really bad or you have watermarks or anything on it, then a little bit of instrument polish and guitar polish will work just fine.
Now, if someone on the group asked the other day about WD-40, what would that do to an instrument?
I'd leave a film on it. It's not necessarily going to kill anything. You'll be able to get it off, but it will leave a bit of a film because it's not really what it's meant for.
So for the fretboard, what do you typically recommend? And what are you going to...
Lemon oil, which you can go in. A lot of music stores will have, like, I think Diodario makes it. Planet Waves probably has some and everything like that, but you can also go into any furniture store and buy lemon oil, but just get plain lemon oil, works the best. I put it on a cloth before I put it on, just to keep from getting too much on there. Not the end of the world if you get too much on there, it's just hard to clean up if you get it on anything else.
It also helps clean a little bit too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll help clean it a little bit. Go ahead and just kind of once down there and then kind of across the fingerboard. Now the nice thing too, if you put it on a cloth and you don't handle the oil as much, you're also not going to end up with oily hands for when you restring.
How often do you need to oil your fretboard?
Every few restrings, as long as you're restringing at a reasonable rate, you know, every 6 to 8 weeks probably, unless you have a broken string and somewhere in between there. But
so most players restring about every 6 to 8 weeks?
It's what I would recommend. I don't know if everybody does that, but to get the most out of the instrument, every 6 to 8 weeks is pretty good, just so they're not going dead, because they'll lose, you know, their ability to produce a good tone long before they'll break in a lot of instances.
So what are the symptoms of a string that's starting to go bad and you know that you need to do a change?
You'll lose some volume, some resonance, and they'll just kind of sound dud. You know, they won't really resonate as well. A lot of that just comes down to the oils in your fingers will kill the strings over time.
Okay, so the fretboard is all oiled up, nicely moisturized again, and we're going to put all the strings on. What are we starting with?
We're starting then with the low G, and for this particular uke, the nut slot is slotted for standard G or low G with a wound, and this happens to be a plain, which is twice as thick nearly.
But I think we took off a low G, so we should be fine with the nut. Correct?
We took off a wound low G, so we will have to slot this one.
Okay, so we're going from 0.29 on the wound, 29 thousandths to 43 thousandths. So we're almost, not quite, but almost doubling the size. So we will need to redo the nut on this, you're saying?
Yep.
Okay.
And this will be pretty easy. It's just opening up the slot, which you want to be careful. If you're doing this yourself and you do have the files to do so, starting on one that's already slotted, you want to be careful because you don't want to crack the nut. So you just want to go really light and have a little bit of an angle towards the tuner, kind of following the angle of the peg head. Basically, is the easiest way to do it, since you do want a little bit of a break angle for that. And I'm slotting this with a 42.
So you're not doing it flat. You got a little bit of an angle to follow the break angle of the cut on the nut.
Exactly. The idea is you want kind of, because it is at an angle to put some tension on the nut on the string.
Right, because we're going straight from the fretboard that's straight, and we're angling down to the tuning pegs.
Essentially, yeah.
So that this point is called the break angle right here.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to have that angle follow the path that the string is going to be going to the tuning pegs.
Nearly at the bottom there.
I assume you're not trying to necessarily make this any deeper, because then you're going to change the depth and change the action.
Exactly.
So you're just trying to increase the width.
Yep. And you can, if you're, it's obviously hard to show this in video. If you're doing this, you can kind of feel when it bottoms out. You will notice just in the feel of pushing the file through there when it gets towards the bottom there. And we are good to go there on that. That easy.
I have to say I didn't realize she had a wound low G on there before, so I hope she likes it.
If not, we'll have to knock that nut off and make a new one.
Well, I just know that the boss told me she didn't like the sound of the winding on the
fingers.
On the fingers. She just doesn't like that sound, and a lot of players don't. So
it's a bit nails on a chalkboard.
I don't mind it on my baritone, but for some people it's. I'm sorry. We'll get the next one a little bit better, but.
Yeah, and we'll get the next one too.
Next one.
Show how to do the tuck and everything. And I like to just line up the hole so I'm not chasing it out of any other angle, just line it up straight. That'll make it easy to kind of show as far as excess string. Kind of, since it will stretch quite a bit, you don't need to go too crazy. You know, the 12th fret where you have your 2 markers or 2 on the side, or generally 2 up from where it meets the body if there is no markings on your ukulele.
Okay, and then with the reds, we're not going to use the winder. It'll take the tension up a little too quickly. So on the reds, it's recommended that you do a little hand winding, a little more exercise for your fingers. But it is going to, in the long run, keep you from breaking the string during the install.
Exactly. And for that first wind, that first wrap around is going over the top of the tail there. Any subsequent winds after that, I'm going to go over the bottom. And you don't need too much extra because they will hold on in those tuners just fine. The more you know, essentially if you end up with a huge row of a bunch of excess string, you're going to have issues staying in tune. There's just a lot for that string to keep up with, and it's going to stretch and then stretch all the way around that post before it finally starts settling in. String going.
Okay, we'll show see we left a tail on that first one.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so that we can tuck it inside, bring it across, and tuck it inside here in a minute. But this.
Yeah, the winding that you want to do with this is essentially, you know, I give it roughly 3 inches off the back side. Is about as much extra as you're going to need. In fact, it'll be a little bit more, but that just does make life easier.
So bring it up.
Yep, bring it up, and you want to go under the string, just like that, and bring it back around. And then to kind of create that curl, all you do is you bring it up. It's going to be kind of hard to see with my fingers in the way, but kind of up and around just like that. And you're just going to repeat that one more time. Just like that. And now, that previous string that we just put on, you're going to want to feed it up, get it right along the back side. That way the tension of the following string will help keep that first string from loosening up on the back side.
Okay. And then back up with the
nut. Now that we're using a thinner string, we will be able to actually knot this on both ends, which keeps from having to have too much extra string. Helps keep it in tune better, helps keep everything from slipping. And what we do there is actually string in from the back. You can string from the front and kind of turn the knob until it's around back if you'd prefer. I find this to be just as easy. And then you'll actually pull it so there's a little bit of tension on the string, since you really don't need much extra for this.
No slack really in that one.
Exactly. And then for the tail, you're going to go underneath the rest of the string and right back through the tuner.
So under and through.
Yep. And just pull.
Okay, moving on to the E string. Just going to repeat the process again, right?
Yep.
So under, pull tight.
It'll be just kind of 2 wraps around.
Wrap once through the loop. Wrap twice through the loop.
And then
take the tail from the previous string before you put tension on the new string. Get it all tucked in nice and neat. Back up to the headstock.
and for this one, we will do exactly what we did on the opposite direction.
So coming from the inside,
exactly, always from the
over
inside.
the top, back under the string, and back through the hole, back up through it again.
And for this string, we'll also want to leave almost no tension on it. You can have just a little bit, but because, since we're always following and tucking through on the previous string, when you get to the end, there's obviously nowhere for that one to tuck, so you will have to go backwards and tuck it through that second to last string there.
And we'll see that in just a second. Because we're actually going to tuck both directions is what you're saying. We're going to tuck
Exactly.
this string back in towards the middle, and the previous string we're still going to tuck underneath this one.
Exactly.
So basically we're crisscrossing
Yep.
the 2 tails.
So we'll get that previous string
So
there.
inside to out and outside back in. Again, trying to make everything nice and tidy with no tails in the end sticking up. We'll trim those off here in a minute. And one last time up here. On the inside, down through, underneath. Sorry, you got your big hand in that one. But hopefully you guys get the idea. It is rather daunting the first time. I certainly can do a restring myself, but Brian doing this hundreds of times, I'm sure thousands by times now, he can do it in about a quarter of the time that I can do it. Another thing with the Reds that we need to make sure we're doing as we're installing them is that we're taking and stretching them, lifting it up, going down the length of the string, stretching them out as we put tension on it, stopping and doing that every so often. The Reds need to have this gentle stretching done to them the whole time that you're installing them and slowly bringing them up to tune. And when you're stretching, you want to lift the string up out of the nut slot so you don't catch it on the nut slot and break a brand new string. So you make sure you try to keep it out of the nut slot while you stretch it, and you can always just set it back in the nut slot.
Yeah, it'll usually come out when it's loose. As you get closer in pitch, you won't have any issues there. Like I'm sure you saw a couple of them came right out because they're just not very tight yet.
Right, because the nut slots aren't necessarily that deep, depending on how high your action is set. Alright, I'll grab a tuner real quick and finish bringing it up to tune. Almost there. Alright, we're getting close. Everything's up to pitch. But obviously they're not going to be settled in today or tomorrow. Or the next day probably. But we're there. How long does it take usually for a set of strings to settle, in your opinion? After putting them on?
Couple days of moderate playing before they really start to settle. First day after the first dozen or 2 dozen tunings, it'll start to kind of stay for you to play a little bit, but if you come back to it, it'll be out again. Is this wishful thinking? Maybe. Getting there.
What's your thought on, after you do a restring, tuning them up a extra half pitch and letting them sit overnight that way?
I don't prefer it that way. I mean, realistically, you're not going to hurt anything. I just don't like tuning anything higher pitch than it needs to go. Just for longevity's sake for the strings.
So for a while it's just going to be a matter of tuning, retuning, playing, retuning, playing, retuning, giving the strings a chance to settle. Why don't we finish up down here at the saddle bridge end, and
For here, I'll just kind of pull the strings out and bring the clippers as close in as I can without, you know, any fear of hitting the instrument. Once those are cut, if you kind of bend them out, you can just kind of push them right in back underneath there. Oh, there's one we missed here. One little bit. All right, good to go on that end.
okay.
For the end here, I will just hold the tail end of the string up, put that right on top of the tuner, give them a cut.
Maybe.
Right. Well, you know, this pair of wire cutters has probably done at least 5,000 restrings, if I had to at least give an educated guess. There we are.
All right. Gonna stay in tune long enough to play a little something, you think?
Let's see, how close are we? Let's see how we are. Tell the difference already with that. Cool.
Definitely like the sound of that unwound low G. It's got a real nice low sound to it. All right, Brian. Well, thank you so much for showing everyone how to do a string change on a set of Reds and how to go from a high G to a low G. And we'll talk to everyone later. See you later.